I had a pretty decent March in terms of reading, so let's chat about it. G'day everyone and welcome to A Fictional Escapist. Welcome back if you are not new here. Today's video is my March wrap-up where I talk to you about everything that I read in the month of March. I have read 9 books in the month of March. Well, one of them was a short story and we've got 2 novellas in there, and then we also have 6 full-length novels over the month. The first one that I read was an audiobook, and that was The Girl Who Played with Fire by Stieg Larsson, Book 2 in the Millennium Trilogy. This is a follow-up to The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, book number 1. After the success of Bloomchrist magazine at the end of book 1, he's approached to basically uncover a sex trafficking ring which would expose some pretty big players in his world. How could he say no? He does like taking down the bigwigs. When 2 of his informants and people working on this particular article turn up dead, Lisbeth Salander is blamed for the crime. He will not and he cannot believe that Lisbeth has anything to do with the murder of these 2 people, so he sets out to prove her innocence. The problem is, she's not talking to him and she does not want to be found. And boy, if anyone knows how to stay hidden, it is Lisbeth Salander. I really enjoyed this book. I didn't like it as much as book 1, I think because a lot of it reads like a police report, or like you would expect a police report to read. It lists out every single detail, and there's a bit of repetition. Personally, you guys already know, I'm not a big fan of repetition, so having that certain phrases and certain words and certain items come up over and over again, like cafe latte. How many times can you drink cafe latte? And why so specific? Why not just coffee? I am really worried for the heart rates of people in this book because there's a lot of coffee being drunk. Anyway, moving on. I liked it quite a bit. Very much looking forward to reading book number 3, which is The Girl Who Kicked the Hornet's Nest, I believe, up in April. The next book I read was The Way of the Shadows by Brent Weeks, book 1 in the Night Angel trilogy. I thought for a debut novel this was really solid. I enjoyed it. On entertainment value, it took me out of my own world and put me into the world of Kyla and the Wet Boys, basically. It could almost be split down the middle, as sort of the first half being a coming of age and training story, and then the second half being like a high stakes political coup where the training from the first half of the book was used in like an insane situation. I know people have some problems with this series, but going on, purely entertainment value, I thought it was pretty cool. We basically follow this kid, Azoth, who hates his life. He is considered a rat, he's like a street urchin, and he wants to apprentice with a wet boy who's basically a better type of assassin and at the top of his game. He eventually goes and does that, and we see his sort of training, and then he gets thrown into some situations where he then has to use those skills, but he's not quite ready to. And they've got this sort of interesting magic system underneath called the talent, which he can't quite grasp, and then things unfold there. I don't want to give too much away, but I really, really enjoyed it. I think I ended up giving it like a 4-star on Goodreads if you like the star ratings, and I'm looking forward to book 2, The Shadow's Edge, which I've got coming up in April. The next thing I read was an NetGalley arc called They Drown Our Daughters by Katrina Monroe. This is a gothic horror set in a coastal town called Cape Disappointment. This was a slow-paced, very tense, very suspenseful book that I really enjoyed because it was so slow, but it was so eerie. I felt tense reading the book, which I hope is what the author was going for because it was quite atmospheric. It definitely put you in that sort of tense situation. This is basically following a curse that's gone awry, and it's a curse that has been put upon one line of women, not one generation, one line of women in a family for generations. We mainly follow 3, follow a grandmother, a mother, and then the mother's daughter, and what that curse has done. It basically calls these women to the ocean, and then the previous generation will be like, no, don't go in the ocean, and they're like, gotta go in the ocean. So I hate the ocean, so this was like terrifying for me. I just do not like it. But we also get some time jumps into the past to see what has happened in the past generations and how those patterns continue, how they've tried to be broken, and it was very atmospheric and cool. This one comes out in June or July, I'm pretty sure, and if you do like one of those slow burn suspense novels, I'd highly recommend picking it up. Then I had some reading recovery time and I read quite a few short things. So I read The Gatherings by Jeremy Ray. This was a horror novel, like an eco-horror novel. One day each year, people of the world sort of come together, they gather together to unite as one, and that's taken quite literally, the uniting as one. The aim is to feel a sense of peace and a sense of belonging, and it all goes pretty smoothly until the dancing starts. So what starts as this super simple idea, this connection, quickly turns into like a horrific event and a fight for the main character's life, as people in like the gathering start biting and turning on each other, and there's some sort of virus situation, and the horror just sort of spreads and they've got to escape. It's pretty cool. I think it's only about 50 pages or so. I sort of sit in the middle. It's 3 stars. It didn't have a whole lot of room to move in terms of plotline or whatnot, but for the short story that it was, very enjoyable and very consumable. If you're okay with body horror, then this may be one to pick up. Jeremy Ray is one of those authors that I really enjoy, just for like a palate cleanse. I've read a couple of things by him. I read Petrified Women last year by the same author and thought that was pretty cool, and then I've got another one of his to read, but I can't remember what it's called. Next up, I read The Citrine Key by L.L. McCree. This was a prequel novella to the Dragon Spirit series, which starts with the Iron Crown. So basically, I'm not sure if this story is separate to the Iron Crown or whether it's sort of like a something that causes something in the main series, but it's an adventure story. We're following Apollo and a couple of companions as they get out of jail to go, and they're basically given an exemption out of jail to go and complete this task where they have to feed a key to an ice dragon spirit who doesn't really want anything to do with them. So it's super high stakes, it's fast paced, it's an adventure story. I really enjoyed it. And if you're going to pick up the Iron Crown, I've heard that people have regretted not reading the Citrine Key beforehand, so maybe give it a go. It's a couple of bucks on Kindle and well worth it. The next thing I read was A Line Unsundered by Ricky Smith. This was a debut novella from quite a young new author, and it's a fantasy-fueled political drama. There's a lot of players in this novella, which confused me a little bit, but there is a family tree at the start of the book if you want to go back and sort of, I guess, keep up a little bit better than I did. It's full of treachery, deceit, lies, magic, and yeah, this multi-generational drama that has unfolded in this book. It was a bit of fun, I enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to see what more this author puts out. Then I read Illborn by Daniel T. Jackson. I definitely sit somewhere in the middle of this book. I didn't enjoy it, but I didn't not enjoy it, and I liked it enough that I will read book 2 to see how the author improves. It's basically 4 separate character stories. So you've got an overall premise, and then you've got 4 different characters who are having the same vision, who have come into some sort of magic, and then we basically follow those 4 characters for a 2-year period of their life as they come into their magic and they come into their own sort of storylines. A lot of the storylines felt very similar. It felt quite formulaic, which I think is where my problems were, and it was repetitious. I'm going to do a full review for Illborn where I do articulate my thoughts about it more, so I'm not going to give too much away here. This is not a bad book by any means. It is very fast-paced. When you read it, you will fly through those pages, but there are just some things that didn't gel for me personally. Then I picked up 2 sci-fis. I'm not a huge sci-fi reader, but I'm hoping to get back, or not even back, hoping to get into the sci-fi genre. I read Jurassic Park in January and loved it. I like the theoretical side of science fiction, and then I picked up Doors of Sleep, which I think I'm more scared about the spacey stuff, but we'll get to that. Doors of Sleep was the kind of sci-fi that I enjoy. It was quirky, it was fast-paced, it was just odd and a fun play on the multiverse and Groundhog Day sort of, I guess, tropes. So we're following Zaxony Delatry, and every time he falls asleep, he wakes up in a new world. He suddenly has to assess for threats and to basically figure out how he can make the most of his situation before he falls unconscious again and wakes up somewhere new. Along the way, he does pick up a companion who can travel with him named Minna, who's sort of human but also sort of a plant, and that's weird in itself, but also quite heartwarming at times. Just her innocence that gets portrayed through the pages. And he also finds an AI type friend in the form of a ring called Vic, and they're like this little band of misfits over a multiverse. They discover that they're being followed by someone from Zaxney Delatree's, or Zax's, past life. Someone he used to travel with, who was basically doing experiments on him. So basically a mad scientist character called the Lecter, and then they have to figure out why they're being followed, and then stop being followed, and then stop this person from stealing Zaxony's blood and making an opportunity for more people to start jumping worlds, because it is going to cause some sort of chaos, I assume, in book 2, which I'm reading this month. This book was only about 280 pages, and even though it was fun and it was quirky, it had some really tender, heartwarming moments and some really beautiful conversations around friendship and seizing the day and not taking life for granted and things like that. So I am definitely looking forward to book 2, which actually comes out, I'm pretty sure, at the end of April or maybe early May, and that's called Prison of Sleep. And the last thing that I read for the month of March was Ancillary Justice by Ann Leckie. If you watched my Giving Space Operas Another Chance video, you will have seen that a good friend of mine, Ryan, recommended that I give this one a shot as sort of an entry into the genre. And I had a couple of days at the end of the month. I'd read a whole bunch of ebooks and I was really missing having a book in my hands, so I picked this one up and was pleasantly surprised. It did take me a little while to get the gist of the book. I don't follow the spacey stuff so well, so I was quite concerned in the first sort of 100 pages, and then it clicked. And once it clicked, it was much more enjoyable for me. But to be honest, if I pick up any new grimdark or any new like epic fantasy, it normally takes me about 100 pages to start getting the gist and having things click as well. So that wasn't the end of the world. We're basically following 2 timelines from I would say an AI type character called Breck. One is in the past, where they were actually a whole spaceship plus 20 different AIs called the Justice of Torin, and then the second timeline is the one in the present. And she's found someone from the past, and she's on a mission to stop the Ananda Minai, or the, I think it's called like the Lord of the Radk. I can't pronounce any of these words. From caving in on itself. There's basically like this conflicting good and evil battle that's happening within this one character who's also 100 characters. Sci-fi is confusing. Sci-fi is confusing. I'll leave it at that. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it enough that I've ordered book 2 and 3, which I think are coming tomorrow, so look out for that in the April book haul. So those are all the books that I read in the month of March. What was your favourite that you read in March? Have you read any of these? Let me know in the comments down below. If you like the content, do one of these. If you want to see more of it, click subscribe at your will, and I will catch you in the next video. Ciao.